If a pilot is flying around the curve of the Earth, then he should be dipping the nose down. Every 5 minutes he should be dipping the nose down to stay around the curve. But the thing that really got me interested was, as you say, the gyroscope. In a plane there is an artificial horizon, and it's based on a gyroscope. And if you spin a gyroscope on a surface, it will want to stay upright. You can twist and tilt the surface as much as you like, the gyroscope will stay upright. If a plane has a gyroscope and it starts following the curve of the Earth, the gyroscope would stay upright, which means the artificial horizon will start to roll backwards. But it doesn't. That's absolute proof that a plane flies over a flat surface rather than a curved one. Because I asked the pilot on my last flight, "Do you ever notice the artificial horizon rolling backwards?" He said, no, but the artificial horizon has complex electronics in it to make sure it knows where it is on the Earth and it compensates. But I went to the manufacturer of the artificial horizon and they confirmed to me that it's completely mechanical, nothing electronic in it whatsoever. So it's literally just a gyroscope that can freely move. That right there is proof to me that planes fly over a plane. None of it makes sense. The problem is that we're taught as children this ball earth lie. And you might ask as a child, what about the people in Australia? They're standing on the bottom of the globe, won't they fall off? And your teacher says, no, gravity. And you go, oh, okay. And you never go back to that question. But when you go back to it as an adult and start looking at it with a critical eye, the whole thing falls apart. As you say, the globe is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's a leading astronomer in America, tells us that the Earth is not a perfect circle, it is actually an oblate spheroid. It's squashed and wider at the equator. Yeah?
So Earth, throughout its life, even when it formed, it was spinning, and it got a little wider at the equator than it does at the poles. So it's not actually a sphere, it's oblate. And officially it's an oblate spheroid. That's what we call it. But not only that, it's slightly wider below the equator than above the equator.
A little chubbier.
A little chubbier.
Yeah.
Chubby's a good way. It's like pear-shaped.
The other thing about the spinning Earth is looking at the stars. Directly above the axis of spin is the pole star, Polaris, directly over the North Pole. And we're told that the reason that all the stars spin around the North Star is because the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. Seems to make sense, because if you put a long exposure camera pointing at the North Star, you'll see the stars will make perfect circles around, perfect star trails. The only problem is the Earth is also orbiting the Sun at 67,000 miles an hour. The Sun is moving, dragging the Earth and all the planets up that way or that way at 600,000 miles an hour. So why do we see perfect circles? Because that's the slowest speed, the slowest motion in that mix. And yet the Earth is moving 67 times faster that way and 600 times faster that way. So you should see the stars do all sorts of strange motions, but you don't. You only see them make these perfect circles. That tells me that it's the stars that are moving, not the Earth. The thing is, what the scientists will give you is calculations and theories why that happens. But we have experience. We see things and they either make sense or they don't make sense. What the scientists do is substitute our common sense and our intuition for calculations and theory. And we're supposed to believe the calculations rather than what we experience ourselves. There was a famous experiment back in the 1800s in England called the Bedford Levels experiment. The Bedford Levels is a canal that is perfectly straight for 6 miles. What a chap called Samuel Rowbotham did was he took a telescope, put it in the water, about 8 inches above the water, and he had a friend in a rowboat with a flag on the back, row all the way to the other end. And he was able to see the flag on the back of the rowboat the whole distance. According to spherical trigonometry, the curve of the Earth is 8 inches per mile squared. So over 5 miles, that's 5 times 525 times 8, which is 200 inches, which works out at 16 feet. That means the boat should have been 16 feet below the horizon. He shouldn't have been able to see the boat. The scientists will say, oh, refraction and this and light bending around the Earth and stuff. But the fact is, it's perfectly flat, and in his book he puts forward many arguments that show, many experiments that show the Earth is always perfectly flat. They say that you see the mast go down last. It's literally just the way your vision works. It's perspective and atmospherics. The limit of your vision is supposedly 3 miles, and then after 3 miles you're supposed to see the boat start to go over the horizon. It's funny that Neil deGrasse Tyson again explains that you can't see the curvature of the Earth from a plane because you're not high enough. The Earth is so big that you can't get high enough to see the curvature. Yet you can apparently see a boat go over the curvature, over the distance of 3 miles, which doesn't make sense. The thing is, when you look out and you see a boat start to go over the horizon, if you suddenly get a pair of binoculars and look, it comes back again. And once it goes out of the sight of your binoculars, if you get a telescope, it comes back again. It doesn't go over any curve of the horizon. What we found, one of the best examples of that is the Antwerp Notre Dame spire, which can be seen something like 240 kilometers away from the spire. So that should be over a mile below the horizon, and you can still see it. There's been a few famous examples just recently of a man who took a picture across the Great Lakes from Michigan and was able to see Chicago, which he shouldn't have been able to see. And there have been so many people who have seen exactly the same thing on different days, different seasons, always the same. One sort of other proof is there's a place in Bolivia called Salar de Uyuni, which is a salt flat. It's literally 100 miles wide one way and 80 miles across, and it's perfectly flat. When it rains, you get an inch of water and it looks like a perfect mirror. How does that happen on a sphere? It shows you that if you're one end of this salt flat, you can see perfectly clearly the other end 100 miles away. So it's just showing you that the Earth is flat. If somebody given the task to mock up the Earth in the moon's sky, you immediately think, well, it should be about the same size as the moon. If you don't think about it, you'd make it the same size. So yeah, it's just a schoolboy mistake. The other thing is, if you were to go to NASA and download one of their photos of the Earth in the moon's sky and put it in Photoshop, drop the saturation and the levels down, you'll see that the Earth has been pasted in, because you'll see a rectangular box around the Earth. It's all fraud, it's all fake. Pretty much everything NASA puts out is fraudulent. There are no images of Earth from space. The only one that NASA actually claims is a photograph was from 1972, and it's the famous picture. It's got Africa sort of near the top, and it's the same picture they've been using for the last 40 or 50 years in every textbook. Every other image is what they call a composite. It's Photoshop. And many of us have been looking at these images of Earth, including the one they call the Big Blue Marble, which was released in 2002, I think. Again, when you zoom into it with Photoshop, you'll see where they've used the clone tool in Photoshop to take a picture of one of the clouds and stamp it in various places around the picture. And they got lazy. In another image, they've even photoshopped the word sex in the clouds, which is a subliminal tool they use to get people to relate to something. They literally, you can look at this and find it on NASA's website. I've got a video from what they call the Galileo space probe. As it left Earth, it took a series of shots of Earth, apparently, and you see that over the course of 25 hours, the clouds never move. I happened to find some satellite pictures of Earth, and I noticed that in these separately taken satellite shots, the clouds were exactly the same as the ones in this Galileo shot. So it's a cloud map. It would be very simple indeed to just silence everybody and put an end to this topic once and for all, turn the Hubble round and show us Earth in real time, zooming in onto a place so that we can see what's happening at that place, and we know that there is something up there looking down on us from space. But they will not do it. They can't do it. It doesn't exist. It literally doesn't exist. When you go onto the plane tracking software, you'll see hundreds and hundreds of flights over the northern hemisphere, and you can track those flights from beginning to end. When you look at any flight in the southern hemisphere, what you'll find is the flight takes off and disappears off the tracking, usually about an hour after takeoff, and then later on will reappear an hour before landing. There's no explanation for it. The point is that distances and flight plans are very different on the flat Earth than they are on the ball. And when you look at flights in the southern hemisphere, they make some really crazy deviations. For instance, if we look on here, let's say a flight from Cape Town over here to Sydney in Australia, they will take you to Dubai first, somewhere around here, yes. So they'll fly you thousands of miles north. Just recently, there was a case of a woman who was pregnant on a flight, and her waters broke on the flight. And I think it was from the Philippines to Los Angeles. And if you look on this map, you're from around here somewhere to here, okay? Now, they were flying across, and her waters broke, and they had to divert, they had to land. So instead of either going back to the Philippines or going on to Los Angeles, they landed in Alaska, which again, if you look on the flat map, it's a straight path from the Philippines over Alaska to Los Angeles. Were flying across, and her waters broke, and they had to divert, they had to land. Instead of either going back to the Philippines or going on to Los Angeles, they landed in Alaska. Which again, if you look on the flat map, it's again a straight path. Okay. So they diverted to Alaska because it was closer. The other thing, flights from Santiago, Chile to Australia will usually stop in Los Angeles. Again, you can see on the flat map that it's, again, a straight path.
Znači, od Australija da otide vo Čile, ovdje na Južna Amerika, praktično proja bez malku vo ravna linija, преку Лос Анджелес, за да слета овдека.
It all seems to make sense. The only thing that would confirm it or disprove it would be GPS, but GPS doesn't work in the southern hemisphere. Nothing flies over the South Pole because, again, on a flat map, the South Pole, the continent of Antarctica, is the ring around the Earth. You can't fly over the ring and get anywhere. That's why we're not allowed to go there. Think about it, it's the only treaty that all these countries have signed and never broken and completely agreed on. It's the only one. What treaty is there that everybody's agreed on? We're being kept away from it for a reason. They have some scientific bases there and it's controlled by the military. If you try and go there by yourself, you will be picked up and escorted back. It's a good reason because they don't want you finding out what's beyond. The truth is out there. The truth is beyond the edge of Antarctica. Admiral Bird actually did 4 expeditions, and most of them were military expeditions with huge military groups. Thousands of people, planes, boats, the works. After Admiral Bird came back after his last expedition, Antarctica was sealed off, and both America and the Russians started firing nuclear missiles straight up. In America, that was called Operation Fishbowl, and it came under something called Project Dominic. Well, Fishbowl makes sense because it seems like Admiral Bird found the edge of the dome while he was out there. And as soon as he left there, they started firing missiles straight up, I believe, to try and test how far that dome went. If you look at the footage of these explosions, what you'll see is when a bomb goes off in mid-air, it's a fireball. It expands in all directions and mostly up. Now, if you look at these explosions on Operation Fishbowl, they explode outwards in a ring, which means it's exploding against something because it can't rise with the heat. So it's exploding against something and exploding outwards. In the middle of the explosion, you'll see it glows hot and then it cools over time. So it looks to me like they were exploding against a dome. I said it was Operation Fishbowl, obviously Fishbowl, but there's a chap called Rob Skiba who discovered that the Project Dominic, the word Dominic means of the Lord. Fishbowl of the Lord. So I believe they clearly know that we're in an enclosed system, and Admiral Bird found the edge and they've tested to see how far it goes up. You saw from his balloon, when he stepped out on the platform, the curvature of the Earth. Yeah, it looked very obvious. Oh, everybody pointed it and said, oh, look, there's a curvature. But when you actually looked at the ground, when you looked at the Earth, it was New Mexico. That's where he jumped. The whole Earth that you saw there was New Mexico. So if that was a curvature, the Earth must be very, very small indeed, and New Mexico must take up a huge part of it. It was a fisheye lens to make that curve. The thing about the Sun is that we're told it's 93 million miles away. It's not. It's actually something around 3,000 miles away and about 34 miles across. That might sound really crazy, but if that's the case and the Sun is circling over this flat plane, its light range is limited. So it's illuminating the part of the Earth it's over at the moment. So say over Europe or over South America there, well, Australia's going to be in the dark because the Sun isn't going to throw enough light to illuminate Australia. If you actually see video of the Sun coming up and going down, many times you'll see that the Sun starts off as it's coming up very, very tiny, and it gets bigger as it gets closer to midday and then gets smaller again. If you watch the trajectory of the space shuttle, it doesn't go straight up. It always goes in a curve and out to sea. The space shuttle goes horizontal. It never goes any further up. It goes horizontal, very, very low down in the atmosphere. It's still in the atmosphere while it's horizontal, so it never gets any higher. And it goes out of sight, not because it goes too high, because it goes too far downrange. It seems that nobody's ever on the space shuttle, and the proof of that is the Challenger disaster. In 1986, the Challenger exploded just after takeoff and killed 7 astronauts. But it turns out that 6 of the astronauts are still alive, and most of them are using their original names. And you can find pictures of them. They're using the same names, and they're doing ordinary jobs now. Teachers, lecturers, lawyers, whatever, but they're still alive. They're fooling us, taking billions of dollars in and giving us images and fakes for that 10 billion. Disneyland is right next to there. And Disney and NASA...
Entertainment.
Yes. Disney and NASA have worked very closely together. Disney worked with NASA on the moon project. They made it, they filmed it so that it would be entertaining for the masses. And they're still working with NASA, so that I absolutely believe that Stanley Kubrick filmed the moon landing.
In Pinewood Studios in London.
Yes, and I think that he left a few clues just to say, so that...
Like Michelangelo.
Yeah, so that we eventually would know that this was his work. I did this. There's no doubt in my mind. I mean, you start looking at the evidence, there's so much to it. How can there be so many multiple light sources? You know, how all the shadows converging, and when they show the so-called sun, it's a big light bulb. It's a joke. It was meant to fool people in 1960s. And also, the camera followed the capsule straight up, right? And it followed it very precisely, right? And it stopped when it started to pitch over. NASA says, oh, we did it remotely. There was a 2 or 3 second delay between sending signals and the camera starting to respond, and then another couple of seconds for them to see that what's happened. So it's next to impossible to get that accuracy with that kind of... And it's only done once. I mean, they can't sort of keep doing it over and get it right. They do it once and they got it right the first time. So no, it's either they left an astronaut on the moon to film them or it was fake. Fake. It was absolutely fake. There's not too many people involved in this. NASA controls space as such. The other agencies popped up. It's a money-making scheme. NASA makes hundreds of billions of dollars a year. The Russians, they're getting in on the act as well. They make money from this. It's easy. If everybody's been trained into believing that this is real, I believe there's a big deception coming, and it's to do with aliens. Because since Roswell in 1947, that was the first time anybody had ever understood the idea of aliens. But since then, we've been bombarded with science fiction and the idea of aliens. And most people believe there are aliens out there. So they've prepared us for an alien invasion or an alien saviour. And I think the flat Earth came along at the right moment to educate people, to make people believe or understand that we've been lied to. And if you know, as I know in my heart now, that that is real and this isn't, I will not be fooled by aliens coming, because there are no aliens. There's no space. It's all fantasy by Disney and NASA. The Bible has a very, very clear view of what this place is, and it matches that place more than it matches this. I don't know what's past the outside of, or the first few hundred miles of Antarctica, but everything I've seen over the last year and a half tells me that that is true and this isn't. And I'm starting to believe and trust my intuition about this. Nobody has actually gone all the way across Antarctica. There are millionaires out there who could assemble the resources to make an expedition and completely go across and chart Antarctica and make a name for themselves, being the first person to do that. But nobody ever does. Ordinary people have become scientists through this. The science community is ignoring a lot of the things that we're looking at. So normal people are going out and doing experiments. This world is very different from what most people think it is. There are very powerful people who rule this world right now. And the ordinary person is a slave in this world. And slaves aren't educated. They're taught what they need to know, that's it. They're not taught truth, they're taught what they need to know. You're taught enough so that you can do the paperwork and operate the machinery, but you're not meant to know what's really going on, because that's the power they have over us. They know what's going on, how this world works. We don't, so they can control us. One of the things about slavery is the slaves weren't freed. They were never freed. When the 14th Amendment or 13th Amendment actually made everybody a slave. The citizen...
Actually, it was opposite.
Yes.
Instead of slaves to be free, free people became slaves.
Exactly.
It was
so if you're a citizen of a country, you're a slave. That's what a citizen is. So they literally extended the slavery to everybody and made it an open prison. And that's where everybody in the world lives now. We're slaves to very powerful masters. We don't see bars. The bars are the borders of the country. Mm-hmm. You have to use a pass to get out. Mm-hmm. And they'll let you out if you show them your pass. And sometimes they won't let you out. As I was coming here, I was lining up to go on the plane, and somebody in front of me was told, "No, you can't fly. They found something in your bag, so you can't fly today." We have natural rights to travel anywhere on this earth. We were born on this earth. We have the right to travel anywhere, but our masters have kept us in small, open prisons that you need to get permission to move around. In my opinion, the Big Bang theory and the theory of evolution and the ball earth theory are all interlinked, and they're all there to make us feel as though we're insignificant. We're small, tiny,
miniature,
unimportant pieces of slime crawling around on a speck of dust in an infinite universe. If that's true, and there's no purpose, there's no meaning to anything, then our owners can do whatever they want with us. Then this is all accidental, so food can be genetically modified because it's imperfect. You know, we can be modified because we're imperfect. If we realise that everything that NASA has put out is CGI, is fake, this idea of a ball earth, theory of evolution, the Big Bang, is all about making us feel nothing so that we can be used. If everybody realised how special we all are, how unique every single life is, then this whole world would change overnight. We wouldn't allow ourselves to be used by this cabal. We wouldn't allow this planet to be destroyed, because they're destroying it because, oh, it's just an accidental planet, one of millions. We've found other Earths. Eventually, if this one gets too messed up, we'll go to another one. No, this is it. So if we all realise that, then we wouldn't allow all these things that are going on. I actually discovered an even bigger lie underneath this, which is history. It's all about control. There are a small group of people who want to control the world. And because there's so many of us out there, they can't control us directly. They can't come round to all of us and control us directly. So they must use our own minds, our own hearts and minds against ourselves. And this is what they've done. They've educated us into this world, into this globe-spinning, heliocentric, Big Bang evolution world, which makes us nothing. And as soon as we change that, when I first started looking, it was about 1.5 years ago, I looked on YouTube and there were maybe about 100 videos and nobody was talking about it. And then over the last 2015, it exploded. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people looking at Flat Earth now. And what happens is that you'll watch something or read something and something will strike a chord in your mind and you'll think, yeah, I've always wondered that. And what will happen is you will start feverishly researching. What happened to me was, as soon as I got that, I spent every waking hour looking for things and testing things. And this seems to be replicated with thousands of people around the world who suddenly come into this. They start researching and getting a passion for this, because this is what I think, it's the truth. And we recognize the truth when we hear it and we feel it. This, I believe, has come at the exact right time so that we awaken to what's going on in the world. Nothing else, 9/11 even, hasn't awoken people to this extent. I'm trying to be the best human being that I can be, because to make a harmonious world. Don't harm anyone, don't kill anybody, don't steal from people, don't lie. I mean, these things are written in our hearts anyway. But we're in a society that legalizes all of the 10 Commandments. Policemen and soldiers can kill. They're allowed to kill.
Politicians can lie.
They can lie.
They're lying all the time.
They're lying all the time. Police have been told that they are allowed to lie to try and catch somebody. They're allowed to lie. Everything in the 10 Commandments is legalized in this society. That tells you who runs this society. This is a profound movement. It's a profound shift in consciousness for people, because unlike any other topic that's come out in the last few years, this one has made people realize that they've been lied to.
Dave, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That you came from England here.